Everyone thought this custody case was already over. The decision felt inevitable, the ending predictable. But one thing didn't make sense. A father showed up desperate, and the system treated him like he was already guilty. Because if what he was saying was true, then this wasn't about money or lawyers anymore. It was about a child being sent back to someone who knew exactly how to look innocent. And the person who noticed it wasn't a judge, wasn't the police. It was a barista who gave her last $300 to a stranger she'd known for 20 minutes. Pay close attention to the next 30 seconds, because the moment the truth slips out, you'll see who panics and who's been lying the whole time. By the end of this story, a courtroom will go silent, a powerful mask will crack, and one small decision will decide where a little girl spends the rest of her life. The coffee machine hissed as Sienna Brooks wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Her fingers ached, her feet throbbed, and the clock on the wall showed 7:47 a.m., another 13 hours to go. "Sienna, table 6 needs refills." Mr. Peterson's voice cut through the cafe chatter like a knife. She grabbed the coffee pot and forced a smile. This was her life now. 28 years old, living paycheck to paycheck, pouring coffee for people who barely looked at her. But she couldn't complain, not really. At least she had a job. The morning rush blurred together, businessmen scrolling through phones, college students cramming for exams, mothers with strollers ordering complicated lattes. Sienna moved through it all on autopilot, her mind wandering to the stack of bills waiting on her kitchen counter. Then the door opened. The man who walked in looked like he'd been through a war. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose around his neck, dark circles hung under his eyes, and his hands trembled as he reached for his wallet. Sienna had seen a lot of desperate people in this cafe, but something about this man made her pause. "Coffee," he said, his voice hoarse, black, large. "Coming right up." She poured the coffee and set it in front of him. He reached for his wallet again, pulled out a credit card. The card reader beeped, declined. He tried another card, declined. A third card, declined. "I'm sorry," Sienna said quietly. "Do you have cash?" The man's face crumbled, just for a second, but she saw it. The moment when someone's last thread of hope snaps. "I thought I had..." He fumbled through his wallet, pulling out a few crumpled dollar bills. "I have $4. "That's enough," Sienna lied. The coffee was $6.50. "No." The man looked up at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "No, I can't keep lying to myself. I can't even afford a cup of coffee." He started to stand, but something made Sienna reach out and touch his arm. "Wait. Just wait. Sit down." She glanced over her shoulder. Mr. Peterson was in the back office, probably counting pennies like he always did. The other customers weren't paying attention. She slid into the seat across from the man. "What's your name?" "Donovan." He wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed. "Donovan Hayes. I'm Sienna, and I don't want to pry, but you look like someone who needs more than coffee." Donovan laughed, but it came out broken. "You have no idea. Try me." He stared at his hands for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I have a court hearing in 2 hours, custody hearing, for my daughter." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and showed Sienna a photo, a little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. "Her name is Iris. She's 8. Sienna's chest tightened. The girl looked so happy in the photo, so innocent. "My ex-wife is trying to take full custody, and she's going to win because I can't afford a lawyer. Mine quit yesterday when I couldn't pay his retainer." "How much was the retainer?" $300. Donovan's laugh was bitter. $300 stands between me and my daughter, and I don't have it. I've been sleeping in my car for 2 weeks. I spent my last money on gas to get to this hearing. I thought maybe I could represent myself, but I know how this ends. She has money, she has lawyers, I have nothing." Sienna felt something crack open inside her. She thought about her own mother, who died when Sienna was 10. She remembered what it felt like to lose a parent, to have that hole in your life that never really closes. What's her name, your ex-wife? Camille. She married a lawyer named Barrett Stone. Big shot, defense attorney. They live in a mansion in Buckhead. And me? Donovan gestured at himself. I'm a disbarred judge living in a Honda Civic. You were judge? For 8 years, until I made the mistake of exposing corruption in the family court system. Judges were taking bribes, fixing custody cases for whoever paid more. I reported it, led the investigation, got 3 judges arrested. His voice hardened. And the ones I didn't catch, they came after me, fabricated ethics violations, got me disbarred, destroyed my reputation. Camille used it all against me in the divorce, took everything. But you got Iris back. 50-50 custody. I fought for 2 years just to get that. And now Camille wants to take it away. He looked at Sienna with desperate eyes. She doesn't even love Iris, not really. This is about punishing me, about proving she can take the only thing I have left. Sienna's mind was racing. $300. She had $320 in her tip jar in her locker, money she'd been saving for 3 months. Her rent was due in 5 days. Sienna, stop socializing and get back to work, Mr. Peterson's voice boomed across the cafe. She stood up slowly, looking down at Donovan, at this broken man who was about to lose his daughter. Wait here, she said. I need to go. The hearing. Just wait. 5 minutes. She walked to the back room, her heart pounding. The tip jar sat in her locker, full of 1s and 5s and the occasional 20. Every dollar represented an hour of work, a rude customer she'd snarled at, a spilled drink she'd cleaned up without complaint. Her rent was $450. If she gave him this money, she'd be short. Mr. Peterson didn't pay enough for her to make it up before the 5th. She thought about Iris, about that gap-toothed smile. She grabbed the jar. When she returned to the table, Donovan was standing, getting ready to leave. She thrust the jar into his hands. What is this? $320. Take it. Get your lawyer. Win your daughter back. Donovan stared at the jar like it was a bomb. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. You don't even know me. I could be lying. Are you lying? No, but then take it. Sienna's voice was firm. Take it and go get Iris. I'll pay you back. I swear on my daughter's life I'll pay you back. I know you will. Now go. Donovan's hands were shaking as he took the jar. He looked at Sienna like she'd just handed him the sun. Why? He whispered. Why would you do this? Sienna thought about her mother, about being 10 years old and wishing anyone had fought harder to keep their family together. Because Iris needs her father, and fathers who fight for their kids deserve a chance. Donovan's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. Win. That's how you thank me. Just win. He nodded and turned to leave. At the door, he looked back. What's your last name? Brooks. Sienna Brooks. I won't forget this, Sienna Brooks. I promise you I won't forget. Then he was gone, and Sienna was standing in the middle of the cafe with an empty locker and a rent payment she couldn't make. Sienna, what are you doing standing around? Mr. Peterson appeared from the back office, his face red and pinched. He noticed the empty locker door hanging open. Where's your tip jar? I gave it away. You what? A customer needed it. Mr. Peterson's face went from red to purple. That money was collected during business hours in my establishment. It belongs to me. It was my tips. Not according to Georgia labor law. You stole from me, Sienna. I didn't steal anything. Those were my tips. And you gave away $300 of my property. You're fired. Get out. The cafe went silent. Every customer was watching now. Mr. Peterson, get out. Sienna felt her face burning, but she kept her voice steady. Fine. I was getting tired of working for someone who treats people like garbage anyway. She untied her apron and dropped it on the counter. An elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, a regular who always tipped well, stood up. "Shame on you, Peterson. This girl has more heart than you'll ever have." "Mind your business, Chen." "I'm minding my business. I'm taking my business elsewhere." Mrs. Chen grabbed her purse. "Sienna, sweetheart, you did a beautiful thing today. Don't let this bitter old man make you doubt it." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Sienna walked out of the cafe with her head high, but as soon as the door closed behind her, the reality hit. No job, no savings, rent due in 5 days. She sat down on the curb and let herself cry, just for a minute, just long enough to let the fear out. Then she wiped her eyes, stood up, and started walking. She'd figure it out. She always did. She just hoped Donovan won his case, because if he didn't, she'd given away her rent money for nothing. And somewhere across the city, in a courthouse downtown, a little girl's future was being decided. If you're enjoying the story so far, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. 2 weeks crawled by like years. Sienna's landlord had been surprisingly understanding when she explained the situation, giving her until the end of the month, but understanding didn't pay bills. She picked up gig work where she could find it: grocery delivery, dog walking, online tutoring for kids who couldn't care less about algebra. Her apartment felt smaller every day. The walls seemed to close in when she looked at the eviction notice taped to her door. Final warning, 3 days left. She was eating ramen for the 4th night in a row when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Sienna Brooks?" The voice was male, familiar somehow, but she couldn't place it. "Yes, who's this?" "It's Donovan Hayes from the cafe." Sienna nearly dropped her phone. "Donovan, hi, how did you get my number?" "Called every cafe in a 5-mile radius until someone remembered you. Took me 6 days." "Oh," her heart was pounding. How did the hearing go?" There was a pause. Then, "Can we meet? I need to see you in person." 20 minutes later, Sienna sat on a bench in Piedmont Park, her stomach in knots. What if he'd lost? What if she'd given away her rent money and it hadn't mattered? What if... "Sienna." She turned. Donovan stood there, but he looked different, cleaner. The desperate edge was gone from his eyes, and next to him, holding his hand, was a little girl with dark braids and curious eyes. Iris. "You won," Sienna breathed. Donovan's face broke into the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "I won. 50-50 custody stands. The judge threw out Camille's petition." Relief flooded through Sienna so powerfully she had to sit back down. Thank God. Iris tugged on Donovan's sleeve. "Is this the coffee lady?" "Yes, baby. This is Sienna, the woman I told you about." Iris stepped forward, suddenly shy. "My daddy said you helped him. Thank you." Sienna felt tears prick her eyes. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Donovan sat down next to her and Iris climbed onto his lap. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. $320, just like I promised. Sienna took the envelope, and the weight of it in her hands felt like breathing again. "Thank you." "No, thank you. Without your help, I would have walked into that courthouse alone, and I would have lost her." He kissed the top of Iris's head. "I would have lost everything." "I'm just glad it worked out." "Can I ask you something?" Donovan's voice was gentle. "Why did you do it? You didn't know me. I could have been anyone." Sienna watched Iris playing with her father's watch, completely content in his arms. "My mom died when I was 10, cancer, and I remember thinking that if someone had just fought harder, maybe things would have been different. Maybe she would have gotten better treatment or more time or, I don't know, but I remember wishing someone had fought for us." She looked at Donovan. "You were fighting. That mattered." "I'm sorry about your mom." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Iris spoke up. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" In a bit, baby. Donovan turned back to Sienna. There's something else I need to tell you, something important. His tone made her nervous. What? The custody case isn't over. Camille is filing for an emergency modification hearing. She's claiming I'm unstable, unemployed, dangerous. But you just won. I won round one, but my ex-wife doesn't lose gracefully, especially not to me. His jaw tightened. She married Barrett Stone 6 months ago. Do you know who he is? Should I? He's one of the most powerful defense attorneys in Atlanta, specializes in getting rich people out of trouble, and he was a junior partner at the firm that represented the judges I exposed 3 years ago. Sienna felt cold. This is personal for him. Very. He sees this as payback, and he has the money and connections to drag this out for years, to make my life hell until I give up. So what do you do? Donovan was quiet for a long moment. I fight, again, and I need help. What kind of help? I need a character witness, someone outside my cast life who can testify that I'm a good father, someone the judge can't dismiss as biased. You want me to testify? I know it's asking a lot, and I know we barely know each other, but you saw me at my lowest point, and you still believed I deserved a chance. That means something. He looked at her with those desperate eyes again. The hearing is in 6 weeks. I hired a lawyer named Nadia Morrison. She's good, but she can't fight this alone. Sienna thought about the eviction notice, about her empty bank account, about how she barely had her own life together, let alone the qualifications to help someone else. Then she looked at Iris, who was drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick, humming to herself. What would I have to do? Tell the truth. Just tell the judge what happened that day, why you helped me, what you saw in me that made you believe I was worth saving. I've never testified in court before. Nadia will prepare you. I'll prepare you. And if at any point you want to back out, I'll understand. I'm not trying to pressure you. But there was pressure in his voice, the kind that came from knowing your child's future hung in the balance. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. Iris looked up suddenly. Are you gonna help my daddy? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Sienna didn't know how to answer. This little girl didn't understand legal battles or custody disputes. She just understood that her family was in danger. Sienna started. Mommy's new husband is mean, Iris said quietly. He yells a lot, and Mommy's always on her phone. She doesn't play with me anymore. She looked at Sienna with eyes too old for 8 years. But Daddy always plays with me, even when he's tired, even when he's sad. Donovan's face was tight with emotion. Iris, baby, you don't have to. I just want to stay with Daddy, Iris said. Please help us. And just like that, Sienna's decision was made. Okay, Sienna said. I'll do it. Donovan let out a breath he'd been holding. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I have some idea, Sienna managed to smile. When do we start? They exchanged numbers, made plans to meet with Nadia Morrison next week. Donovan gave her details about the case, about Camille and Barrett, about what to expect. As they talked, Sienna noticed something. Iris had wandered over and was now sitting next to her on the bench, leaning against her arm. Just a small gesture of trust from a child who probably didn't trust many people anymore. She likes you, Donovan said softly. I like her too. When they finally said goodbye, Iris hugged Sienna around the waist. Thank you for helping my daddy. You're welcome, sweetheart. Walking home, Sienna felt lighter than she had in weeks. Yes, she was still broke. Yes, she was still facing eviction, but at least she was doing something that mattered. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Nadia Morrison. Donovan gave me your contact. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 2 p.m.? We need to discuss strategy. Sienna texted back a yes and kept walking. She had no idea what she'd just signed up for. No idea that Barrett Stone was already digging into her background, looking for ammunition. No idea that in 6 weeks she'd be sitting in a courtroom facing one of the most ruthless lawyers in Georgia. All she knew was that a little girl needed help, and for the first time in a long time, Sienna felt like her life had purpose beyond just surviving. The next morning, she showed up at Nadia Morrison's office in Midtown. The building was nice, but not ostentatious, professional without being intimidating. Nadia herself was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Sienna Brooks, thank you for coming. Of course. They sat in Nadia's office, and she pulled out a thick file. Let me be direct with you. Barrett Stone is going to try to destroy your credibility. He's going to paint you some naive girl who got manipulated by Donovan. He's going to find every mistake you've ever made and put it on display. That's comforting. Nadia smiled grimly. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. Stone plays dirty, and he's very good at making good people look bad. So what do I do? Tell the truth. That's it. Don't embellish, don't exaggerate. Just tell the judge exactly what happened and why you did it. Nadia leaned forward. But I need to know everything about you first. Every potential weakness Stone might exploit. Have you ever been arrested? No. Fired from a job? Sienna hesitated. Yes, 2 weeks ago from the café where I met Donovan. Why were you fired? For giving away my tips to Donovan. Nadia made a note. He'll use that. Make it seem like you're reckless with money, unstable. I was helping someone. I know, and that's what we'll emphasize, but you need to be ready for him to twist it. Nadia looked at her seriously. Are you sure you want to do this? Once you're in that courtroom, there's no backing out. Sienna thought about Iris, about that hug, about the way the little girl had said, please help us. I'm sure.
Good. Then let's get to work. If this story is hitting you in the feels, go ahead and drop a like and leave a comment telling me what you would have done in Sienna's situation. The law offices of Stone and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in Buckhead. Sienna felt underdressed the moment she walked through the lobby. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, women in designer suits clicking past on expensive heels. The mediation had been Nadia's idea. One last attempt to settle things before the hearing. Sienna wasn't sure why she needed to be there, but Nadia had insisted. Barrett wants to see who he's up against, Nadia had explained in the car. And we want to see him, get a read on his strategy. Now they sat in a conference room that probably cost more than Sienna's yearly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The table was polished to a mirror shine. Donovan sat next to her, wearing a suit that Nadia had helped him buy. He looked good, professional, but Sienna could see the tension in his shoulders. The door opened. Camille Hayes Stone walked in first. She was beautiful in that cold, calculated way. Perfectly styled hair, designer dress, diamonds that caught the light. But her eyes were flat when they landed on Donovan. Not angry, just empty. Behind her came Barrett Stone. He was exactly what Sienna expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He moved like a man who'd never lost anything important in his life. Donovan, Barrett said, his voice smooth. Good to see you. Barrett. And you must be the character witness. Barrett's eyes swept over Sienna like she was a bug under glass. Sienna Brooks, the barista. The way he said barista made it sound like an insult. That's right, Sienna said, keeping her voice steady. Barrett sat down, spreading files across the table with deliberate precision. Well, let's not waste time. We all know why we're here. Nadia folded her hands. Your client filed for emergency custody modification based on claims that my client is unfit. We're here to discuss a reasonable compromise. There is no compromise, Camille said coldly. Iris deserves stability, a real home, not some man living in a one-bedroom apartment who can barely keep a job. Donovan's jaw tightened. I have a job. I'm consulting for... Consulting, Camille laughed. You mean taking whatever scraps people throw at you because no law firm will touch you. That's enough, Nadia said sharply. Barrett raised a hand. Let's keep this civil. Camille is simply stating facts.
Donovan, you were disbarred. You have no stable income. You live in a modest apartment where Iris doesn't even have her own room. Meanwhile, Camille and I can provide Iris with everything she needs: private school, her own room, opportunities. Iris doesn't care about a big room, Donovan said quietly. She cares about being loved. And you think Camille doesn't love her daughter? Barrett's voice had an edge now. I think Camille loves winning more than she loves Iris. Camille's face went red. How dare you? You kicked me out of her life for 2 years, Donovan continued, his voice rising. 2 years where I fought just to see my daughter for supervised visits. And now that I finally have her back, you want to take her away again? Not because it's what's best for Iris, because you can't stand that I won something. You didn't win anything, Camille spat. You got lucky, but your luck is running out. Barrett put a hand on Camille's arm. Let me handle this. He turned to Donovan with that practiced smile. Here's what we're offering. You get supervised visitation, once a month, 3 hours. In exchange, you drop all custody claims, sign away your parental rights regarding major decisions, school, medical, religion, everything. That's not a compromise, Nadia said. That's you taking full custody. That's us being generous, because the alternative is we destroy you in court. And trust me, we will. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table to Donovan. Inside were photos. Donovan sleeping in his car, Donovan at a pawn shop, Donovan coming out of a cheap motel. We've been documenting your living situation, Barrett said. These photos show a man in crisis, a man who can barely take care of himself, let alone a child. Donovan stared at the photos, his face pale. You had me followed? We did our due diligence. Barrett pulled out another folder. This one he slid to Sienna. Sienna opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside was everything. Her eviction notice, her termination from the café, her bank statement showing a balance of $47. A woman who can't pay her own rent, who was fired for theft, who has no college degree and no stable employment. This is Donovan's character witness? This is who's supposed to convince a judge that he's fit to be a father? Sienna felt her face burning. I didn't steal anything. You gave away money that belonged to your employer. In most states, that's theft. Barrett leaned back in his chair. But don't worry, I'm sure the judge will find your little act of charity very touching, right before she awards custody to my wife. You don't know that, Sienna said, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. I know that I've never lost a custody case, and I don't plan to start now. Barrett closed his folder with a snap. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get on that stand, and I'm going to ask you about your eviction, your firing, your financial instability, and then I'm going to ask you how someone who can't manage their own life could possibly judge whether someone else is fit to be a parent. That's not fair.
Fair? Barrett laughed. Miss Brooks, this isn't about fair. This is about what's best for Iris, and what's best for her is stability, security, a home where she doesn't have to worry about whether the lights will stay on. Donovan stood up abruptly. We're done here. Sit down, Donovan, Barrett said calmly. We're not finished. Yes, we are. Donovan's voice was hard. You want to fight? Fine. We'll see you in court. That's your choice, Barrett said, but I should warn you, we're not just going after custody, we're going after everything, your reputation, your ability to ever practice law again, your relationship with Iris. He smiled. By the time we're done, she won't even want to see you anymore. Camille stood up, smoothing her dress. You should have just signed, Donovan. You always were too proud for your own good. They left. Just like that, the door closed behind them with a soft click that somehow sounded like a threat. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Sienna stared at the folder in front of her, at all her failures laid out in black and white. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm making this worse. No, Donovan's voice was firm. They were always going to attack you. That's what Barrett does. He finds the weakest link and he hammers it until it breaks.
But he's right. I can't even keep my own life together. How am I supposed to— Stop. Donovan sat back down, taking her hand. His grip was warm and steady. You gave a stranger $300 when you had nothing. You risked your job, your home, for someone you didn't even know. That's not weakness, Sienna. That's strength, real strength. He's going to destroy me on that stand. Maybe, but you know what matters more than how you look? Donovan's eyes were intense. The truth. You helped me because it was right, because Iris needed her father, and no amount of expensive suits or fancy words can change that. Nadia gathered her files. He's right. Barrett is a bully. He's trying to scare you out of testifying. Don't let him. But what if I do more harm than good? You won't. Nadia's voice was certain, because at the end of the day, the judge isn't going to care about your bank account. She's going to care about why you helped Donovan, and that story, that's powerful. Sienna wanted to believe her. She really did. But sitting in that conference room, looking at photos of her own poverty, she felt small and useless. The drive back was quiet. When they dropped Sienna off at her apartment, Donovan walked her to the door. I meant what I said in there. You're not weak. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling confident. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared. He hesitated. Can I tell you something? The day you gave me that money, I was planning to give up. I was going to miss the hearing, let Camille win, because I couldn't see a way forward. Donovan. But then you handed me that jar, and you looked at me like I was worth saving. Nobody had looked at me like that in 3 years. His voice cracked slightly. You gave me more than money, Sienna. You gave me hope, and I need you to hold on to that same hope now. Can you do that? Sienna thought about Iris, about her gap-toothed smile and her small hand in Donovan's. Yeah, I can do that. Good. He smiled. We're going to win this, I promise you. But as she watched him drive away, Sienna couldn't shake Barrett's words. By the time we're done, she won't even want to see you anymore. She went inside and found an email from Nadia. Subject line, preparation materials. Inside were hundreds of pages, court procedures, sample questions, testimonies from other character witnesses. At the bottom was a note. Barrett Stone has won 43 custody cases in his career. He's never lost, but there's a first time for everything. Let's make sure this is it. Sienna printed everything out and spread it across her tiny kitchen table. Then she got to work. She had 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks to become someone who could stand up to Barrett Stone and not fall apart. 6 weeks to save a little girl's life. And somewhere across the city, in a mansion in Buckhead, Barrett was preparing too, building his case, sharpening his weapons. The battle was coming. The weeks blurred together in a haze of preparation. Nadia drilled Sienna relentlessly, mock cross-examinations in her office, practice questions over coffee, role-playing worst-case scenarios until Sienna could answer without her voice shaking. But nothing could have prepared her for the actual courtroom. It was smaller than she expected, more intimate. Wood paneling and fluorescent lights, and the faint smell of old paper. Judge Patricia Reynolds sat behind the bench, a black woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Sienna sat behind Donovan in the gallery, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from trembling. Across the aisle, Camille sat perfectly composed next to Barrett, who was reviewing notes with the casual confidence of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. All rise. The hearing began. Barrett's opening statement was surgical. He painted Donovan as a man in crisis, unstable, unemployed, living in poverty. He showed the photos of Donovan sleeping in his car. He referenced the psych evaluation that claimed Donovan showed signs of paranoia and hostility. Your Honor, Barrett said, his voice smooth as silk, this isn't about punishing Mr. Hayes for his past. It's about protecting Iris. A child deserves consistency, safety, a home where she doesn't have to worry about whether her father can keep the lights on. Then it was Nadia's turn. Your Honor, what Mr. Stone calls instability, I call resilience. Donovan Hayes lost everything when he chose to do the right thing. He exposed corruption in our court system at tremendous personal cost. He was disbarred not because he broke the law, but because he upheld it. And through all of that, he never stopped fighting for his daughter. The morning dragged on. Witnesses, documents, financial statements. Camille took the stand and performed beautifully. The concerned mother, the stable provider. She talked about Iris's private school applications, her college fund, the bedroom they decorated with Iris's input. I just want what's best for my daughter, Camille said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. And I don't think living in uncertainty is what's best. When it was Donovan's turn, Barrett shredded him. Every stumble, every gap in employment, every night he'd slept in his car. Mr. Hayes, is it true that you've been homeless for extended periods? I prefer to say I was between housing. Answer the question. Were you or were you not homeless? Donovan's jaw tightened. Yes. And during this time, did Iris ever sleep in your car with you? No, never. I would never. But she visited you during this period. Supervised visits, yes. In parking lots? Fast food restaurants? When I couldn't afford anything else, yes. Barrett turned to the judge with a sad shake of his head. No further questions. By lunch, Sienna felt sick. This wasn't going well. She could see it in Nadia's face, in the way Donovan's shoulders slumped. The afternoon session began with Sienna's testimony. She walked to the stand on legs that felt like water. The clerk swore her in, and she sat down, acutely aware of everyone watching her. Nadia started gently. Background questions. How she met Donovan. What happened that day in the café. Why did you help him? I took a breath. Because he was a father fighting for his daughter, and I thought he deserved a chance. Even though it cost you your job, your savings? Yes. Why? Because some things are more important than money. Family is one of them. Nadia smiled. Thank you. No further questions. Then Barrett stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket with deliberate slowness, letting the silence stretch. When he finally spoke, his voice was kind, almost sympathetic. Miss Brooks, you seem like a very caring person. Thank you. A person who makes decisions with her heart rather than her head. Sienna hesitated. I try to do both. Do you? Barrett pulled out a document. You were fired from your job for giving away money that didn't belong to you. It was my tips. Tips collected during work hours on your employer's property. Legally speaking, that money belonged to the café. He looked at the judge. But Miss Brooks gave it away anyway, without thinking about the consequences. I thought about them. Did you? Did you think about how you'd pay rent, how you'd eat, how you'd survive? I knew it would be hard. You have $47 in your bank account, Miss Brooks. You're facing eviction. You have no stable employment. Barrett's voice was still kind, but his words were knives. How can someone who can't manage her own life possibly judge whether someone else is fit to be a parent? I'm not judging anything. I'm just telling the truth about what I saw. What you saw, you spent 20 minutes with Donovan Hayes before you gave him $300. 20 minutes. Barrett let that sink in. Tell me, in those 20 minutes, did you verify his story, call the courthouse to confirm he had a hearing, contact his lawyer? No, but did you ask for references, check his background, do any due diligence at all? I trusted him. You trusted a stranger with money you desperately needed. Barrett leaned against the witness box. Miss Brooks, would you say you make a habit of giving money to strangers? No. So this was unusual behavior for you? Yes. Impulsive behavior? Sienna saw the trap. I wouldn't say impulsive. What would you call giving away your rent money to someone you've known for 20 minutes? I'd call it compassion. I'd call it poor judgment. Barrett straightened. No further questions. Sienna left the stand feeling like she'd been filleted. She caught Donovan's eye as she sat down, and he gave her a small, reassuring nod, but she could see the fear in his face. The afternoon wore on. More witnesses, more arguments. Finally, Judge Reynolds called a recess. I'll hear from Iris tomorrow in chambers. Then I'll make my ruling. That night, Sienna couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Barrett's cross-examination in her head, every answer that had come out wrong, every trap she'd walked into. Her phone buzzed, a text from Donovan. "Thank you for today. I know it wasn't easy." She texted back, "Did I make it worse?" His response came quickly. "You told the truth. That's all anyone can ask." But Sienna wasn't so sure. The next morning, while Iris testified in the judge's private chambers, Sienna sat in the hallway with Donovan. He was trying to read a book but hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. "What if she says she wants to live with Camille?" he whispered. "She won't. But what if she does? What if Barrett got to her? What if—" "Donovan," Sienna took his hand. "Iris loves you. Anyone can see that. Love isn't always enough." They sat in silence, waiting. 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. Finally, the door opened. The bailiff called them back in. Judge Reynolds sat behind her bench, her face unreadable. Iris was already back in the gallery with a social worker, looking small and scared. "I've reviewed all the evidence," Judge Reynolds began. "I've heard testimony from both parents, from character witnesses, and I've spoken extensively with Iris herself." Sienna held her breath. "Mr. Stone makes compelling arguments about stability and resources. Mrs. Hayes Stone has demonstrated that she can provide material advantages for Iris." Donovan's hand tightened on the table. "But this court's primary concern isn't about who has the bigger house or the better job. It's about what's best for the child." Judge Reynolds looked directly at Iris, and Iris was very clear about what she wants. Judge Reynolds pulled out her notes. "She told me, and I quote, 'Daddy always makes time for me, even when he's sad, even when he's tired. He never makes me feel like I'm in the way.'" Camille's face went pale. She also said, "Mommy's house is big and pretty, but it doesn't feel like home because Mommy's always working and Derek yells and nobody really listens when I talk." Barrett started to stand. "Your Honor, the child has been coached." "Sit down, Mr. Stone." Judge Reynolds' voice was ice. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I know when a child is being coached, and I know when a child is speaking from the heart." She turned back to her notes. "Iris also told me about the coffee lady, about how Miss Brooks helped her father when nobody else would. She said, and this stuck with me, the coffee lady proved that good people still exist." Sienna felt tears in her eyes. "Mr. Hayes, you've faced tremendous hardship. You've made mistakes, but through it all, you've never stopped putting your daughter first. That matters." Judge Reynolds looked at Camille. "Mrs. Hayes Stone, you can provide material wealth, but you cannot buy a child's love or her trust, and Iris has made it clear where both of those lie." Donovan was shaking. "Primary custody is awarded to Donovan Hayes. Mrs. Hayes Stone will have visitation every other weekend, contingent on family counseling to address the concerns Iris raised about the home environment." The gavel came down. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Iris was running, flying across the courtroom into Donovan's arms. He caught her and held her like he'd never let go, tears streaming down his face. "I get to stay with you, Daddy?" "Yes, baby, yes, you get to stay with me." Camille stood up stiffly, her face a mask. Barrett was already packing his briefcase, avoiding eye contact. Judge Reynolds wasn't done. "Mr. Stone, I'm filing a formal complaint with the state bar regarding your conduct during these proceedings. Your attempts to intimidate witnesses and manipulate testimony were noted." Barrett's head snapped up. "Your Honor." I said what I said. You're dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Donovan couldn't stop smiling. Iris held both their hands swinging between them. "What do you want to do to celebrate?" Donovan asked his daughter. "Ice cream. And can Sienna come?" "Of course she can." 6 months later, Sienna stood behind the counter of her own café, Maya's Coffee House. The sign outside was simple but beautiful. The space was small but warm, and it was hers. Donovan had invested the settlement money from his wrongful disbarment case, not as charity, but as partnership. He owned 20%, she owned 80%, and together they'd built something real. The door chimed. Iris ran in, still in her school uniform. "Sienna, we got A's on our science project." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Donovan followed, loosening his tie. He was working again, consulting for an ethics reform group, using his experience to fix the system that had tried to break him. "Rough day?" Sienna asked, pouring him coffee. "Long day, but coming here makes it better." He smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Sienna's heart skip. They'd been dancing around it for months, the connection between them, the way Iris called her Aunt Sienna, but looked at her like she hoped it might become something more. "I've been thinking," Donovan said quietly, while Iris was distracted by a pastry display, "about that day in the cafe, how you changed everything with one choice. You would have figured something out. Maybe, but I wouldn't have figured out you." He reached across the counter and took her hand. "And I really like having you figured out." Sienna laughed. "Is that your way of asking me on a date?" "Is it working?" "Maybe." "Daddy's being weird again," Iris announced, returning with a chocolate croissant. "I'm not," Donovan protested. "R2, you get all smiley when you look at Sienna." "Iris." "It's okay, Daddy. I like it when you're happy." She looked at Sienna seriously. "You make him happy." Sienna felt her throat tighten. "He makes me happy, too." "Good." Iris nodded, satisfied, and went to her usual table to do homework. Later that evening, after the cafe closed, Sienna found herself thinking about that morning months ago, when she'd been broke and desperate and facing eviction, when giving away $300 seemed like the worst decision of her life. She thought about how one moment of compassion had changed everything, not just for Donovan and Iris, but for her too. Her phone buzzed, a text from Donovan. "Dinner tomorrow? Just the two of us? Iris is staying with my sister." Sienna smiled and texted back a yes. She locked up the cafe and walked home through streets she now knew by heart, past Piedmont Park where they'd first met after the hearing, past the courthouse where she'd testified, past the old cafe where it had all begun. And she thought about how sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when you choose kindness over caution, when you believe in people even when you have no reason to, when you give away your last $300 to a desperate father and somehow end up saving not just his daughter's life, but your own life too. Because that's what compassion does. It saves us all. If this story touched your heart, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss another one. Drop a comment and tell me about a time kindness changed your life. And hit that like button because stories like this deserve to be shared. Thanks for watching.